Welcome to ILTV's Insider. I'm Steve Leibowitz. Those venturing outside this week have noticed that Israel is in the midst of a heat wave. Sharav desert winds leaving the country sweltering for several days. Medical officials have urged the public to avoid the sun during peak hours, drink plenty of water, and give particular attention to children and the elderly. This summer, we've been largely spared the catastrophic fires that often come with the extreme heat and wind. Not our neighbors in Cyprus and Greece, who are experiencing devastating blazes. And further afield, Hawaii has just been hit with the deadliest fire in U.S. history. Scientists say that July was the hottest month ever recorded globally. With climate change comes extreme, often devastating natural events. What to expect, and how is the government of Israel and the world governments coping, or are they? Well, joining us now are Professor Colin, who headed the Department of Environmental Studies and is researcher and lecturer in atmospheric sciences at the School of Geosciences at Tel Aviv University, and Sue Serkis, the Oxford-educated environmental reporter at the Times of Israel and formerly at the Jerusalem Botanical Gardens. If I could, Professor, I want to start with you. Your research deals with electronic phenomenon in the atmosphere and severe weather. Based on your understanding, what is the current situation in terms of the increasing number of extreme events, and how bad could it get?
Well, basically, when we're talking about storms and the weather, there are two things which actually fuel the weather. One is temperature and one is moisture. So when you have warmer temperatures, you have more evaporation from the oceans, from vegetation, and that moisture in the atmosphere is the fuel for storms, whether they're tropical storms, hurricanes, or flash floods. On the other hand, when you don't have the situation for clouds and storms to form, that additional evaporation actually dries out the vegetation at the surface and results in the conditions which are likely for fires like we've seen recently in Hawaii. Changing wind patterns, which is also a major cause of these devastating fires in Hawaii. All of these things are related to changes in the composition of the atmosphere, the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. I've been studying this for the last 30, 35 years. If you add more energy to the atmosphere, you get more extreme weather. You get drier weather in some places, you get wetter weather in other places. And it's fairly clear that when you add more energy to the atmosphere, you get more extreme events.
Let me just, for the record, after 30 years of research, climate change is real, correct, Professor? For those that doubt it.
Very, very real, extremely real. We've been saying that it's going to be a problem from the 1990s, from the first report of the IPCC in 1990. Every 6 to 7 years, there's an updated report which simply makes the message even stronger, the certainty greater, and today it's basically 99.9% certain that climate change is changing because of us, because of human activity on the planet.
Sue, the Middle East has experienced extreme weather-related events this summer with devastating fires in Cyprus and Greece. I actually live in a fire area in a small town surrounded by forest. This summer we were pretty lucky. So far, we haven't had any fires in our neighborhood. But is Israel prepared for what's coming?
Israel is not prepared at all. In fact, there was just a report came out by the Knesset Research Unit showing just how ill-prepared we are. The policymakers here don't seem to really get it. There's a lot of lip service. We did set targets for cutting emissions and for increasing solar energy, but according to the Environmental Protection Ministry, we are high, and those are targets that we promised the United Nations. We are very, very unlikely to reach them. We do not have a climate law, which many, many other developed countries have, and the climate law's importance is that it will anchor targets that governments have to reach. There's basically nothing with teeth that the government has committed to. We are still exploring and hoping to produce a lot more gas, natural gas, which is a fossil fuel, subsidizing natural gas, not really subsidizing renewable energy. And I think I think that there are a number of important things, and I'm sure that we'll get on to talking about what one can do. But I think also one of the really critical things to move or to undertake what's called a transition to a cleaner economy is to look at where the money goes. And the money is still going largely into fossil fuels. And that includes the money from our pension funds and from our saving funds and our insurance policies.
Well, that's great news. Before I go on, and I've been waiting my long journalistic career to broadcast one of my favorite comic bits from my favorite stand-up comedian of all time. His name is George Carlin, who maintains that the planet is doing just fine. Let's see.
Compared to the people, the planet is doing great. The planet has been here for 4.5 billion years, all right? 4.5 billion. We've been here, what, 100,000? Maybe. 200,000? Maybe. And we've only been engaged in heavy industry for a little over 200 years. 200 years versus 4.5 billion. And we have the conceit to think that somehow we're a threat, that somehow we're going to put in jeopardy this beautiful little blue-green ball that's just floating around the sun. Planet has been through a lot worse than us for a long time. Been through earthquakes, volcanoes, plate tectonics, continental drift, solar flares, sunspots, magnetic storms, the magnetic reversal of the poles, bombardments for hundreds of thousands of years by comets and asteroids and meteors, sandstorms, erosion of all kinds, cosmic radiation, worldwide fires, worldwide floods, recurring ice ages, and we think some aluminum cans and some plastic bags are going to make a difference? Planet isn't going anywhere. We are. We're going away. We're going away.
George Carlin of blessed memory. Professor, could the comedian be correct? Might man be doomed?
Yes, I think he's 100%. The planet will be here once we've left the planet Earth. And the planets, even in the last ice age, which wasn't too far long ago, 20,000 years ago, when you had a kilometer of ice above New York City, the sea level went down 100 meters. That was the period when Russia and Alaska were connected. You could walk across there because the sea level went 100 meters down. If all the ice on the planet melts, sea level will go up 70 meters, and most of the cities around the world will be underwater, but the Earth will still be here. So we don't have to really worry about the Earth, but we do have to worry about humanity. And if we continue in this way, it's pretty sure that we're going to do ourselves in here. The problem is us. We're selfishly looking at ourselves. If sea level rises by a few meters, we're going to have many coastlines flooded, going to have millions, if not billions, of people displaced and refugees. Again, the extreme weather, the heat wave. And so basically the problem and the urgency of climate change is how it's going to affect us, humanity, our economies, our countries, conflicts, resources. But the Earth's going to be here, whatever we do.
Sue, just before we began this broadcast, you mentioned that you have a story coming out in the next day that deals with one of our Abraham Accords partners who are into the oil business. And we're also hoping to get into business with the biggest of the potential Abraham partners, the Saudi Arabians. Should Israel be demanding something ecologically from these oil sellers?
I don't know how much power Israel has to demand something ecologically from the oil sellers. You probably know that Sultan Al Jaber, who is the head of the Abu Dhabi Oil Company, the state oil company, was picked to head the up-and-coming COP28 climate conference, which will be held in Dubai later this year. There's been enormous pushback over that for obvious reasons. You don't put an oil man in charge of a climate conference. A lot of calls for boycotts. In fact, a lot of the green groups in Israel are going to boycott it for that reason. But I spent last night perusing the US Justice Department's list of US companies who are doing business with the UAE. And there's a rather interesting story, which is that the Sultan Al Jaber also heads a company, it's a state company called Masdar, which is investing in renewable energy research. And Masdar has contracted with a New Jersey-based company run by a man called Zev Fulst, who's Jewish, who's actually he's actually chairman of the International Board of the Perez Center. He once ran the Anti-Defamation League office in Jerusalem. He has this PR company, and Sultan Al-Jaber's people have contracted with that company now to clean up his image, to green his image, to show the West, particularly the West, that the UAE is a very, very important partner in the transition to clean energy. And in fact, part of the contract, the PR company says that it might well tap into the US Jewish establishment to help change the image and to help, get meetings with top people in the administration. And it underlines something very interesting, I think, which is that a lot of people in a lot of countries seem to think that, if you know the Jews, that's the way to get to the US administration. So it's a curiosity, but I think that it's also very interesting.